Hey everybody, what's going on? Kason Morris here, and welcome to another episode of Kason Morris Learnings. This is where we talk about everything related to life, work, and legacy. And this is episode 4 of running these live shows, Kason Morris Learnings. And this episode, super excited to not only have my producer from Alive Studios, Chris Fernandez, with me, but to have a very, very special guest, someone who is near and dear to me, a supporter from day zero of my work and life design crafting. Miss Oneka Cornelius, how are you? How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. Always.
Thank you. As I talked about when we started the series, the way we approach our conversations is, there's a design for life model, and what I talk about in that model is really the three tenets of what you ultimately will do toward designing your life. I've used it for myself. I use it in my practice, my coaching practice, and I also use it as an executive serving others. So the three big pillars are around the idea of your life and what you love and live for. It's around your work and what you get paid to do ultimately. And then last but not least, the idea of your legacy. So what do you leave behind for yourself and others? And this week we talked all about life. And what I want to do today with this episode is just recap some of the highlights for you. And with having Onika on with us today, she's been a supporter, she's listened in. I just want to have candid conversations around these topical ideas. So when you think about the life pillar, we talked about three big concepts. So the first was health. And then we double clicked on some of the ideas around how do you drive your health? Mind, body, and spirit is the framework that I used. 2 weeks ago, we talked about love. And I talked about where are the different places you find love, from family, friends, community. And last week, we talked about the art and the understanding of play as an adult. And we talked about the different elements of play. And ultimately, in this model, the aim is to not create balance, but to go towards synergy, knowing that different things have their seasons. So let's dive in. Definitely would love to kick things off with everyone we have here today.
Yeah, let's get it. Where do you want to
So
start?
Nika,
Yeah.
yeah, thinking about it. Let's talk about health and the importance of health in relation to life design. Last week, I framed out the idea that from a health perspective, you got to focus on your body, you got to focus on your mind, and you got to focus on your spirit. And what I offered folks was a way to go about assessing where they are right now. And I would love to just get a flavor for how that resonated for you and what questions you had listening into that episode.
Yeah, that's great, Kason. First, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the invitation. For me, it was timely because there are and have been probably for the last 2 to 3 months things that have had me really focusing in this area, in this space of my life. You're absolutely right. Is about seasons, and had somebody close to me who actually passed away. And in thinking about her life, her legacy, her health, probably hit me more because we're literally the same age.
Mm,
So nothing like that level of reflection, right? To really just kind of have you check all of these things in all of these areas. So this is what I call heart work that I had already started doing. So it really resonated for me to help see the life pillar probably even more crystallized or distilled across those three dimensions that you mentioned because they're important. The reality of it is we don't always do the best at keeping ourselves priority. Somewhere along the line, we got the message that to be good for others, it becomes this self-sacrificial play or process. And the reality of it is we can't help anybody unless we are okay in every
Yep.
sense of the word. And I think that part of it, I think, is just age. One thing that I remember hearing when I was younger, things don't make sense when you're younger, but keep living. And things get clearer, what's important, and not even the what, but the who, the why becomes more important. And so this was really timely for me because I was already in that space doing that work. So it was good to see that language. There were some things that I think we probably kind of threw in chat that really resonated. I'm like, wow, that's powerful how we think about life and love and play,
Yeah.
right? People that know me, I tend to be really serious, and that's one thing that I committed. Like, I'm not going to take myself or life so it's not that serious, and it's important. I think in a lot of ways, as we get older, we forget to play,
Yeah.
sake of play, right? Not where there has to be an objective and an outcome and a score. How about let's just play? So that was powerful for me.
No, I really, really appreciate you saying that. And one of the reasons why, to your point, I lead with the logic of health initially, because a lot of times we are in positions, whether we're parents, whether we're sisters, brothers, whoever we are, where we often pour into others and pour into other things, in relation to our lives, and really rarely hold space for reflecting on ourselves. So I appreciate what you're saying, and that's why I also deconstruct that idea of health into it's not just about your physical health, but really the combination of all the things you mentioned, of where your mindset is, where your spiritual sense is, and then how you are taking care of your body and your energy so that you're able to show up and then pour into those other things, like the love elements, the play elements. So that's why I lead with the health construct when
Yeah.
thinking about the life pillar, because I feel like it's a multiplier for all the others.
Yeah, and just in full disclosure, right? I've not been good at that. Let's just call a thing a thing. I've
Hmm.
not been good at that. I think I've been probably more aware of my health and well-being and all that that encompasses, right? Because that's not one dimensional.
Yeah.
For sure, like the entire world has gone through a pandemic, and is still, in the throes of, right? I think that made everybody hyper aware of, our bodies, of the air, what we take, literally our breath, right? Doesn't get more serious than that. But being able to continue that conversation about what does that look like, right? Not just am I well physically, am I well emotionally, like for real? Am I well mentally, right? One of the things that I've been sharing and having in conversations with other members of my tribe, even as we were going into the pandemic, I'm like, we have to be so careful. People are not okay. People weren't okay going into it, right? If we'll be really, really honest. So to expect people to emerge from extended bouts of being separate from other people, experiencing, what may have been or felt like catastrophic events, loss of
Yeah.
life, loss of jobs, loss of family, being separate, not having community. Uh, that's a lot of deprivation, right?
Yeah.
So people are not okay. People are
And
not
it's
okay.
such a good segue to the point of why I then talk next about the construct of love, and thinking about where are you getting that sense of connection from, and just breaking it down into subsets, because of, to your point, of all the things that have been happening over the last couple of years with the pandemic, not having access or convenience to those that we were maybe normally used to in our pre-pandemic cycles. And that's why I broke it down into thinking about, what is your sort of primary love, like if you have a partner or a significant other. How do you think about your family love, and your relationship with your family? And family has a broad definition that can be blood relation, But I created a separate space of thinking about family as blood relation because I felt like the idea of friends also had its own line item. And then to the point you just emphasized, community. Like, so these things are not mutually exclusive,
Yeah.
but what I wanted to share was like, creating language around how there are maybe different little pockets and different and areas that you can look for love and that sense of connection. So that way, as you're trying to improve, knowing
Yeah.
that balance is not the goal, you can look into other avenues and really target some things that you just want to move the needle on a little bit so that you're centered and you're able to have those affections of love in your space and with your tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. What I think about is that brings to mind for me really early on in the pandemic would have been, gosh, like, spring of 2020. And it's like 2023. Can you believe that we're saying 2020? Unreal. But when, there was a sense that there was going to be a shutdown, right, for a couple of weeks. And I remember taking the time and I kind of threw it out there and I said and I think that might have been when we reconnected. Hmm. I
I
remember
think
reaching out to members of my tribe because one of the things that I had already started focusing on was saying, you know what, these are relationships that are important to me. They're people that I've met over time. I don't really do the whole network associates kind of thing. It's kind of like it's tribe. That's my word for community because my tribe is deep. My tribe is amazing. And what I said was I just kind of threw it out there and I'm like, okay, things are getting ready to get real quiet. Who's up for virtual coffee? Who wants to, open a Zoom room and let's just have our morning coffee together? Let's catch up. Because let's be honest, right? Life happens to all of us. We have families, we have jobs, we have businesses. We were doing all the things. And the relationships sometimes are the things that fall to the wayside. And so I was like, you know
yeah.
what, I want to be really intentional. Let's make room and make time for each other. And that was probably some of the most beautiful time. And I'm so glad that I did do that early on uh, because it was really, really important. It was about carving out time with my daughter. I've got one teenager that's still at home, and it felt like an amazing opportunity for my husband and I to kind of pour into her
Yeah.
because she's getting ready to be 16. I'm like, you know what? We've got time. I don't know that we'll get this level of concentrated time to just be with her and to pour into her the things that are important. It was about my husband and I. I'm like, okay, what does it mean for us? You know what I'm saying? All of the things, like just
Yeah.
all of the relationships. And I love what you said, right? There's the sense of family and there's the sense of relatives because they're not always synonymous, right?
Yep.
So how do you build and cultivate and talk and find time? And so was really just intentional about that. So that was really powerful. That resonated with me deeply. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, and even to that point, for those that are listening or viewing this, when you
Mm.
think about the last year and how online communities have really sprouted, even the
That's
value of being in a platform like LinkedIn, which normally had the profile of being a place of professionalism, started to become more human, where people were looking for high value connections though through the lens of professional and personal development. Exponential growth in all these digital spaces where you start to develop more communities of practice and more support. And I have a number of colleagues in my network, and my network grew in LinkedIn in a much more intentional way because you started to find common threads beyond the job profile, and people who are truly looking to support and evangelize and share ideas in a safe space. So, with all that in mind, like with so much change at scale, I think
yeah,
it was a real springboard for people to look for the humanity in others through both a personal and professional lens, and that's how I think about community, and I think of communities in the plural sense, because depending on where you are and in the relation to love and the ways, the things that feed you, you might have
yeah,
different communities for different things. But I love the, pun intended, the convergence around these ideas, and how community really is such an impactful thing in what we do
Yeah,
now, professionally and in general.
yeah. I was talking to somebody about it. I remember there being a palpable difference. Like you would drop into communities or you would, do a meeting with a couple of folks, and there was definitely a sense of, how can I help you? What do you have going on? Is there anything that I can do? There was this sense of like camaraderie and connected problem solving and resource sharing
Yeah.
that was very intentional. And it was different because, let's be clear, right? LinkedIn has been an amazing tool. Very, very similar experience for me. Not nearly as sophisticated, but clearly it was an amazing place, right? It was originally a marketplace.
Right.
It became a community. It became a town square. It became a place to try out ideas. It has become a place of unparalleled transparency, right? We now see people that join and like, hey, I've been impacted by, a layoff situation or a risk situation. Do you know anybody? People are
Right.
now creating these databases, and hey, I know an amazing group of people. LinkedIn was actually designed for us to get better at marketing ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it became, how do I give in this time in a very selfless way? How do I market myself less, but give or lend my platform or the voices and people that I'm connected to in service of others? And that was powerful. I'll be honest. I hope that's something that doesn't change as people strive to get back to what I think people considered or called normal. Jury's still
Yeah.
out on that for me. I don't, the let's get back to the way things used to be. I'm like, can we just go ahead and tell the truth and say it wasn't that great?
That absolutely resonates with me.
Yes.
Can we,
I got
can we
to
all just
interject for
tell the
that.
truth
Like,
in the room?
what?
Like, it wasn't the best.
It was
And,
not.
so people are like, I can't wait to get for things to go back to the way they were. And I'm like, oh, I don't, like, no, that's That's not
Yeah.
an not an option, and you kinda wanna say, I don't know, pumpkin. I don't know if it's gonna happen that way." Um,
And to your point, it's like the next normal. So that's the way I tend to frame it. Is
yeah,
you we can't go back to where we were because we were forever changed.
for
So
sure.
I think there's a craving for a sense of normalcy. But to your point, I think there's a subset of folks that just have to accept the reality that what was will never be again. So how do we embrace the things that were good and add them to what we need to continue to thrive going forward? Because like you said, I don't think it was as great as people actually reflect.
And we have to call it a reframing because it wasn't what was normal, it's what was familiar,
Yeah.
right? And so when we say that we're craving or we wanna go back to the way things were, what we're looking for is consistency. What we want
Mm,
is ritual. What we want is something that is dependable.
yeah.
But how we were living was none of those things. It wasn't any of those things. And so we have to just be honest and say, no, what we're missing is what was familiar. Even if it was
Yeah.
painful, even if it was painful, even if the commute was crazy, it was familiar. And so it's like, how do we just create new patterns that are consistent and that can become our new familiar, you know?
Absolutely. And just one last point on this idea of the thinking about the love space and what you emphasized around, now we're in this season of massive layoffs and people being in situations where they have to transition because the work world is calibrating to this next normal. Whereas we were all digital for some time, and a lot of organizations, they became a little bit bloated and a little bit complacent in relation to their principles around people management and people optimization for the work. So to go back to your point around how folks are showing up for one another in true communities of practice and willing to give in service and
Yeah.
in kind to others, I think is immensely powerful. So even though this is a stressful point in time for tens of thousands of people, I always encourage my colleagues that I know that are struggling with this, that you can't personalize it, and recognize that there are other opportunities available to you if you tap into your networks and tap into this idea of service. It's a great opportunity to sort of audit where you are and holding space for this idea. It's truly a spectrum too. You know, meaning that depending on where you work, you know, the landing may be a little softer than it is for some others, where it's just very reactive, ripping off the band-aid with little to no context or support. But all that
Yeah.
being said, when you tap into this sense of the love space, I feel like the way our professional communities have been responding for each other, to the point that you made around creating spreadsheets and just really going above and beyond, I really do think that's a form of love, because you're helping people, you know, reframe and reorganize their lives and get back. So for all those that are participating in that, you know,
Yeah.
hats.
And let's be honest, right? Okay, so here are a couple of things. I think that part of what that shows us, and it's like this invisible case study, so let's just call it what it is. That's what culture looks like.
Yeah.
We were building a culture of giving and service and collaborating and co-solutioning. People have been building and innovating in ways that are unparalleled with people that they may never meet in person. So when I talk to clients and when I talk to just people in my tribe, it's like that is what it looks like to build culture. Because I think there is, there has been this misnaming, this misapplication of us having to be co-located in the same building, in the same workspace to build culture.
Yeah.
Culture happens where human beings are. It is where we are and how we behave and how we treat one another, how we serve or service one another. And we've seen that that can and does happen in virtual spaces. That's not always about co-location. So I think that that's an amazing opportunity to look at it that way, for sure.
No,
Uh,
I I love that. I really do.
yeah, because I think we're seeing the pendulum swing back. And, again, it's not like, it's not a rubber band. It's not going to go back to the foosball tables. It's not going to go back, to the happy hours. Part of that is because people have clearly understood now what they do versus who they are.
Yeah.
That got very clear for people, over the last 2 to 3 years. There's, work as part of what I do versus work as my identity.
Mm,
And so I think we're still seeing the ripples of that, where people are being faced and confronted with that, to your point around the shifts in the workplace and, all of the things that are happening with workforce corrections.
yep.
It's hitting people, differently, of course, individually respected and honored as it should. But it's making it even more clear to us that what we do is an extension of who we are, but it is not the only thing that we are. So again, if I go back to, how you thought about the pillar, it's like, guess what? That's who we are, right? And what we do should be in service to who we are. And who
Yeah.
we are can be in service to what we do, but they are not one and the same.
Very, very well said. You know, as great way to think about this element as we get to the end of this very, very healthy conversation. And one thing I just wanted to call out to talk about the last pillar in the life segment, that you emphasized earlier on in this conversation, play. So to your point, you know, the idea of the foosball tables and all that kind of stuff, those are great incentives,
Yeah,
but the call to action, I think, for individuals who are listening is think about, you know, play as your activity, the things that you need to do as an adult, that it's not always about work. It's about the things that are feeding your spirit, that are feeding your mind, that are feeding your body, and hold space to know where you stand with those kinds of things. Because especially when you're dealing with all this fluctuation in work and life, if you haven't learned anything at this point, you know, your life is yours, and
yeah,
you have to prioritize that first and foremost, agnostic of the work that you are doing.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Like I said, and that wasn't a finger pointed outward. That was a finger pointed inward. It's like when did I forget how to play? Right? Uh, just going to like go ahead and expose my family. I love that, I have a teenager, and one of the things that she aspired for us to do was to do a puzzle together as a family. And, bless her, she had amazing intentions. She was very, very confident that me and her dad and her could tackle a puzzle together. And I'm like, I am so grateful of the confidence you have in us, but I'm gonna need you to start small. And she's like, okay, I will. And she brought home a 3,000 piece puzzle. And I'm like, the pressure. And we laugh at it now. But it was like, us just laughing at, okay, well, who are the puzzle maestros in the family? It was not me. It was not me, but it was good to just laugh and kind of have that moment because I said, look, I can make any two puzzle pieces fit. Now, that doesn't mean there will be a picture that will be clear or the intended outcome, but I can make the pieces fit, but it just became an opportunity for us to laugh more because we needed that. And I don't know that we always value play the way we should, that doesn't necessarily have a score attached or doesn't have necessarily a sense of competition
Yeah.
attached. Those things are good. I get that, I am not competitive in that space at all. So for me, play needs to can it just be fun and, not necessarily have a measurable outcome. It was really just about us spending time together. And for those wondering, no, we didn't finish the puzzle. We didn't. We think the dogs ate one or two pieces. We're not sure. We're not sure because they were small, but uh,
Hey, and to that point, it's not even about the finish. It's about the fact that you all had tried and you gained value from it. So,
yeah.
Oneka, thank you so much for like leaning in to, this work and these conversations. And just to bring everybody back, I would like to just kind of show the last, the slide where, recapping this element of the design for life model where we talked about the pillar of your life. And next week we're going to talk more about your work, and I'm really excited to break that down in relation to those practices. But emphasizing your life and what you love really broke it down into three constructs of focusing on your health, focusing on the idea of love and where you're able to receive it, give it, and cultivate it, but then ending with the last idea of play and how you find play and the types of play that you can enjoy that are human to you and part of yourself, to the points that we've emphasized. So thank you all for your time. Kason Morris, this is Kason Morris Learnings, and Oneka, thank you so much again for your time in holding space for this conversation. And looking, looking forward to your continued support. And Chris, thank you for your
Thank
production
you.
as well, giving us the space to do this great work in a fun and engaging way.
Thank you,
Also,
Chris. Amazing.
thank
Kason,
you.
thank you for having me. Always happy to
Thank
be here.
you. I appreciated both your time. I was over here taking notes. I also just wanted to say thank you to some of the people out there on LinkedIn. Ciara Selby, Mike Kelly Jr., they were joining in and just they were vibing with everything you guys were saying and just like chanting along. So thank you to you guys out there. And then also, Kason, if you are interested in working with Kason, want to put some time on his calendar, please feel free to do so.
Yep.
Scan the QR code down below. But yeah, thank you
Always
both.
happy, always happy to help and have these healthy conversations, and this is why we do it. I mean, even to what Oneka does, like Oneka is someone that I don't think we got into it, but she became my mentor from my days at Accenture, just representing herself, and me not seeing people that looked like me doing the kinds of things that I wanted to do. she was gracious enough to take me under her wing and not only provide support in relation to how to navigate the culture of management consulting, but truly becoming a invaluable friend and just supporter of my ongoing growth and development. And I am humbled to be in a place where I can reciprocate that to her.
Mm,
So thank you.
Awesome. Gotta definitely have you on for an episode
thank
two
you.
to get that full story. I feel like
Yeah, I'd
there's
love
some
to come back and hang
gems
out
that
with
can
you
be
guys. Would
there.
love it. Would love to come back.
Awesome,
All right.
awesome. Well,
Well,
take care.
thank you, everyone.